think one of the funniest and most painful things about spiritual people is that we often want the most advanced possible version of almost everything while refusing to do the thing directly in front of us. I'll give you the example of a person who wants deep meditation but refuses to sleep. People want divine guidance, including me, but we keep lying to ourselves and calling it intuition. Sometimes we want psychedelic healing, but our rooms are just a mess. They look like an episode of Hoarders. I don't know if anyone knows what that is anymore. But yeah, we want nervous system regulation and then drink 6 coffees and argue online with strangers in comment sections. It's weird. We want spiritual community, but can't send one honest text to a person who actually knows us. We'll just literally message strangers and talk to new people all the time. I think sometimes we want purpose, but we can't keep a small promise. Now, maybe none of this applies to you, but I'm talking about a collective and a we that I know exists. Maybe you're not part of it. Again, I could have said they, but I knew I had to say we, because nobody who makes a podcast called Idiot Mystic gets to stand outside this whole circus with a clipboard and act like I'm not part of the madness. I have done versions of this. I've wanted deeper meaning when the smaller explanation was available, and honestly humiliating. I think I used to look for signs when what I really needed was to stop pretending that I didn't already know the truth. There were times where I wanted spiritual insight, but I was treating my body worse than my rental scooter when I lived in Thailand, which, oh my god, I don't know how that thing survived. Well, a guy from Jersey gave it to me. Not like New Jersey, the British thing, the European one. I didn't even know it was a thing till I met him. Thank you, Mark. That scooter changed my life. But yeah, that is the biggest problem with basic things. They expose us. A complicated spiritual crisis has this kind of dignity to it. You can say you're in a dark night of the soul, and people may nod with concern, depending on how much St. John of the Cross they've read, and how good your lighting is. I think there's much less dignity in admitting you've slept badly for the past 3 weeks, barely eaten, scrolled until your nervous system is just fried, and now you feel abandoned because, well, why wouldn't you? I'm not saying every spiritual crisis is physical, because, that sounds stupid, just saying that I'm not saying it. People go through real stuff, real despair, real doubt, real confrontations with ourselves. I'm not trying to reduce the soul to hydration, protein, and maybe a clean bathroom. I think it's safe to say that's the wellness influencer version of materialism, where every human problem becomes some kind of deficiency of magnesium, sunlight, or a supplement that happens to be on sale through their link. Still, the body and the ordinary life around it are much more involved than I think we want to admit. There's a very old kind of spiritual wisdom across traditions that says the ordinary isn't beneath the holy. Food, sleep, cleanliness, truth, keeping your word, all these things are actually important and directly connected to your spiritual self. I think the way you handle a dish, make your bed, respond to a text message, or drink a glass of water isn't separate from the way you handle prayer, meditation, love, or God. I think people before me have called this practical mysticism, or integration, the kind of spirituality that doesn't let you escape into fog. It doesn't have any patience for a person floating above their own life, speaking beautifully about surrender, while the people around them are exhausted by their chaos. There's something almost offensive about it. We arrive with our spiritual language, our theories, our dramatic inner feelings, and this older, sharper wisdom asks us if we ate, slept, or if we're telling the truth. It asks us if we cleaned the thing we keep stepping over, or if we answered the person we were avoiding. It asks us if we kept the promise we already made. It's so annoying to me because it's difficult to argue with. The ego seems to prefer advanced spirituality because advanced spirituality allows a lot of performance. You can become someone who has experiences, insights, awakenings, downloads, shadows, ceremonies, retreats, and these private meetings that no one can verify. Some of that may be real. I would never dismiss that considering what podcast this is. But the ego also loves any territory where it can become special without becoming honest. I think the basic things don't provide as much room for theater. So like you either washed the dish or you didn't. You either slept or you didn't. You either replied honestly or you kept lying. You either kept the tiny promise or you found a complicated philosophical reason to betray yourself again. This is why the push-up episodes seem to work so well for people. One push-up a day is almost offensive in how small it is. It doesn't flatter the ego. It doesn't create a hero story. It asks a person to do something humble and repeatable, then stop. The water episode is similar. Hydration is too basic to impress anyone. But if your brain and body are struggling because you refuse to drink water, the refusal becomes spiritually pretty interesting. This episode is about that whole category of life. The basic thing you keep avoiding may be the spiritual gate. Not the only or deepest possible gate, just the one currently standing in front of you while you pretend to search for some kind of hidden doorway. Let's start with sleep, because sleep is where many fake revelations are born. I'm convinced that a lot of people are making spiritual decisions from a body that is begging to be unconscious. The mind gets weird at night. Ordinary worries get mythologized, and a slightly awkward conversation from 3 days ago turns into evidence that everyone you know hates you. A delay in someone replying can be a delay in your destiny. Your future ends up collapsing into one glowing rectangle. We start looking for meaning for our exhaustion, and because exhaustion is dramatic, we usually get a lot of material. This is really dangerous for people who are already sensitive, creative, traumatized, or even spiritually inclined. It seems like the tired mind becomes symbolic. Everything you see and feel, everything you experience feels charged. Thoughts start arriving with the emotional weight of prophecy. And you don't think to yourself that you're dysregulated because you haven't been sleeping. You actually think something is happening. Maybe something is happening. You are tired. That doesn't make the feeling fake. The feeling is real, but I think the interpretation due to your lack of sleep might be unreliable. A sleep-deprived person can still pray, meditate, love, and tell the truth. Humans are so resilient. Parents survive years of interrupted sleep and somehow don't collapse into dust. Trust me, I've done it. Soldiers, doctors, caregivers, night shift workers, and I guess people in grief often function under these horrible, awful conditions. I don't think the issue is whether spiritual life can exist during exhaustion. It clearly can. I think the issue is whether we should create unnecessary exhaustion and then treat the consequences as some kind of mystical information. A tired person could also mistake urgency for guidance, and this has happened to me a lot. They may confuse anxiety and intuition. They may think a relationship is doomed because at 2:13 a.m. the silence in the room is suddenly unbearable. I've seen people, including myself, make decisions at night that wouldn't make it past breakfast. There's a small practice here. Before you make it mystical, sleep. At least try. If the same truth is still there after rest, it may deserve more attention. If it vanishes after one decent night, it was probably not a revelation. It was her nervous system trying to run some complicated analysis while everything was already shutting down. This doesn't mean sleep fixes everything. People with insomnia know how insulting that idea can sound. Sleep problems can be medical, psychological, hormonal, spiritual, and honestly drive you completely insane. The point isn't just sleep. The point is that sleep is part of the truth. If you're not sleeping, any serious analysis of your mental and spiritual life has to include that fact. Ignoring sleep while seeking deep meditation is trying to watch Netflix while your house is burning down. Meditation itself reveals this quickly. People will say, "I can't meditate, my mind is too active." Then you find out they slept for 4 hours, drank caffeine all day, argued, doom scrolled, ate randomly, and then attempted meditation at midnight in a room full of blue lights and piles of laundry. The problem might not be that they lack spiritual capacity. The setup is just terrible. Now, meditation isn't a magic trick that overrides every condition around it. It's a practice of attention, and we know that attention lives in the body. The same applies to divine guidance, at least in my opinion. I had to take a break to eat breakfast with my son while I was recording this, so I don't know if my voice sounds different now. But that's what happened, so yes. I think we were talking about the same applying to divine guidance. And again, that is just my opinion. I think this one is so much more uncomfortable because it involves honesty. People often say they want guidance when what they really want is permission to keep avoiding the truth. They ask God, the universe, their therapist, their friend, their tarot deck, their dream journal, maybe their favorite podcast host, and possibly a crow, to confirm something they already know. The human being is very talented at outsourcing honesty. At least I know I am. A person knows a relationship is hurting them, but they keep asking for signs. Another knows they're lying to someone, but they frame it as a complicated situation. Someone knows they've outgrown a job, or a habit, or a friendship, or a version of themselves, but they want a supernatural event to arrive and make the decision feel like a responsibility. I think it's really harmful to think that guidance is always hidden. Sometimes the truth is sitting in the room right in front of you, wearing like a bright yellow reflective vest. We pretend not to see it because seeing it would require action. This is where so-called discernment can easily become spiritual-sounding procrastination. Discernment is real and necessary, but it does seem like often it becomes a velvet blanket we throw over our own cowardice. We say, "I'm waiting for clarity," when what we actually mean is, we're just waiting for a version of the truth we can handle easily. This doesn't sound like discernment to me. If you want divine guidance, start by telling the truth about what you already know. You don't have to know the whole path, or need perfect certainty. Just stop lying about the part that has already become obvious. The first guidance may be extremely plain. Apologize, leave, stay and do the work, stop pretending, ask for help, admit you're angry, admit you're afraid. Maybe stop calling the same mistake a season, or stop calling avoidance peace. Maybe stop pretending that your chaos is actually passion, and maybe, just maybe, stop calling someone else's attention love, when you know it is really just a drug. A person might receive more guidance after obeying the truth already given. Now that is a harsh sentence, but in my experience, it seems to often be accurate. People want the next instruction, but they always ignore the first one. They want a map, but they want the full map before they even stand up. I think this is where spirituality becomes adult. The soul wants God, or an answer, but the ego wants God to become an accessory to its avoidance. The basic thing is honesty. You don't have to make a big confession to the entire internet or a dramatic speech. And more often than not, honesty begins in a private sentence you finally allow yourself to say without the extra garnish. I don't want this. I'm scared. I'm using this person. I'm addicted to the attention. I know what I need to do. I've been pretending not to know. That single sentence can become more spiritually important than another 12 hours of asking for signs. Then there's the psychedelic healing problem. I understand why psychedelics attract people. That's why they attracted me. A lot of us have had powerful experiences with them. A lot of us have encountered grief, beauty, forgiveness, the unconscious, God, or at least something we couldn't fit into our ordinary worldview. These experiences are profound, and I'm never going to pretend that they're meaningless or anything close. Still, there is this really weird pattern now where people want ceremonial, visionary, chemically assisted access to the depths of their psyche, while their ordinary life remains almost completely unattended. They want to meet the Divine Mother, but they won't wash their bedding. They want ancestral healing, but they can't call the living family member they actually need to speak with. They want ego death, but the group chat does not survive the death of their opinion. They want integration, but their room is filled with empty cups, old receipts, laundry piles, and the smell of a personal era that should have ended months ago. I'm not saying a messy room means someone can't have a meaningful psychedelic experience. Actually, I feel like I am saying that, but I'm not really saying it, but part of me feels that way. Some of the most interesting and spiritual human beings I know have had living spaces that for some time used to resemble crime scenes. Depression, ADHD, chronic pain, poverty, and stress can make cleaning genuinely difficult. I don't think a messy room is a moral category, but I think it can become a message. The external environment often reveals what the internal environment has been unable to organize. You can ignore a feeling, but it usually reappears as clutter. You can postpone a decision, but usually the postponement takes physical form. A chair might become the place where clothes go to get lost. A desk becomes a museum of avoidance. That's why you never see mine. Although desk-wise, I think I'm doing pretty good lately. Like, it's not cozy and cute, but it's kind of organized. There's not much stuff on it. Anyway, I don't think the room is judging you, but it is reporting. I don't think the room cares how messy you are, but it is providing us a data point. Before seeking another extraordinary experience, touch the ordinary reality around you. Pick one object and put it where it belongs. You don't have to do the whole room. That can become overwhelming and then nothing happens. Just one object, one cup, one plate, one bag of trash, maybe a shirt. Let the body participate in order. This is why clean one dish before fixing your life sometimes works as a spiritual instruction. It reduces the battlefield. Your mind wants to solve your destiny, your childhood, your relationship patterns, your spiritual calling, and your posture. Fine. First, though, just clean the fork. The fork will not fix your life, but it will contradict the part of you that believes nothing can be done. This is why small contact with reality is so important. People in despair often become abstract. I mean, my life is a testament to that. The future turns into fog. The self becomes a story of complete failure. The body drags and becomes heavy. Everything feels too large to even start. Cleaning one dish brings the task down to a scale the nervous system can survive. I know there's no glamour in it, but that's exactly the medicine. You can't really turn one clean dish into a spiritual brand unless you're really committed to being annoying. The action is silent. Well, depending on how noisily you wash the dishes, it's not, but it's subtle. It puts one corner of the world back into order. It reminds the person doing it that reality can be touched. After that, maybe you clean another dish, or maybe you stop and rest. We're not trying to make you into a productivity machine. We're just trying to regain one honest unit of agency. I think that tiny gain or regain is so vital. Now I know I talk about this all the time and it's probably getting annoying, but let's talk about nervous system regulation, which has become one of those phrases that began as useful and then got dragged into the content machine until it started appearing next to morning routines, trauma quizzes, jawline exercises, and usually people in linen explaining that my ancestors are disappointed in me. Nervous system regulation is real. It's so important. People do need ways to calm, ground, orient themselves, breathe, move, and return to a state where they can think and feel without being hijacked by threat. But the term becomes absurd when people use it actively building a life that keeps the nervous system under attack. You can't drink 6 coffees, skip food, sleep badly, sit indoors, consume political rage bait, check notifications every 60 to 80 seconds, argue in comment sections, and then wonder why the 30 seconds of breathing we didn't transform you into a monk. The breathwork isn't the problem. It's the ecosystem it's happening inside of. A person might take one calming breath and then immediately return to a digital environment designed to keep them agitated. I think coffee deserves its own discussion here because caffeine is a socially acceptable way to borrow energy from a body that may already be in debt. I like coffee. I drink it every day almost. I'm not pretending to be above it. I'm not saying I'm above it. I've even been known to have a pumpkin spice latte or two. Sometimes. Maybe 700. I don't know. Coffee has helped so many people become employable before noon. But there is a point where caffeine stops being a beverage and an innocent energy boost, and becomes a way you manage your personality. People will say they're anxious, restless, unable to sleep, irritated, chemically imbalanced, and mysteriously unable to sit still. Then you find out they've been drinking coffee since about 20 minutes after they woke up. Again, the coffee is not evil. The lack of honesty is the real issue. If your nervous system is struggling, look at what you're feeding it. Not only food and drink, but arguments, images, fantasies, noise, and the low-level humiliation of watching other people appear more successful than you during moments when maybe we need to be brushing our teeth. I might just be speaking for myself, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Arguing online is especially corrosive because it offers this fake kind of purpose. You feel so engaged. You feel like you're morally awake. You feel like you're defending truth. Often you're just giving your attention to a stranger who will literally forget you exist 3 minutes after they ruin your whole afternoon. The body doesn't know that the thread is abstract. Your heart rate and breathing change, muscles tighten up, the mind rehearses responses. Your nervous system prepares for social combat while you're sitting alone in a chair or on your bed. Then people ask why they can't access peace. Peace isn't like something you practice, but it's something you stop actively poisoning. The basic thing might be fewer stimulants, fewer arguments, fewer notifications, and less voluntary exposure to people who make you feel insane. This is where discipline looks less like doing more and more like refusing the bait. The person who doesn't reply to the comment that triggers them is actually doing serious spiritual work. I know nobody applauds them, but that's just because nobody saw it happen. And that's probably for the best. Public restraint has a way of turning itself into another performance if it's seen. I feel like I'm talking much faster than usual, but maybe that's because I'm not telling you a story. The next issue I wanted to discuss, though, is spiritual community. People often say they want community, but what they actually mean is much more complicated. They want to be seen, understood, supported, and included. Now, these are real needs. Loneliness isn't some kind of minor inconvenience. It can shape the whole nervous system, and a person without reliable connection can start to feel spiritually unreal. But community isn't just something that happens to you. You also have to actively participate in it. That participation can sometimes start with just one honest text. That sounds almost too small probably, but for many people it's huge. They have friends, family, students, acquaintances, people who care about them, people they have avoided. They complain about feeling disconnected while ignoring the actual threads of connection that already exist in their lives. The honest text is difficult because it can't hide inside a spiritual idea. I've been distant. I care about you. I miss you. I'm sorry I disappeared. I don't have the energy for a long conversation today, but I wanted to answer honestly. I love you, but I need a little space. These are not complicated sentences. They're just hard because they make the person real. Many people preferred imagined community because imagined community does not ask for vulnerability. You can long for a perfect group of conscious people who understand your soul while ignoring the imperfect person who sent you a message last week. The fantasy community requires no awkwardness, no repair, no scheduling, no disappointment, and most of all, no risk. Actual community is inconvenient. You're gonna get misunderstood, you're gonna disappoint people, someone's gonna talk too much, another person is gonna disappear when life gets hard. You're gonna have to apologize and forgive and decide whether a relationship is worth maintaining after the first wave of excitement fades. Spiritual community isn't a collection of people who constantly validate your identity. It's a massive responsibility. The honest text is one entrance into that field. This connects directly to the 137 conversations problem, if you listened to that episode. Modern technology has made us reachable to more people than our nervous system can easily hold. Some people need to answer less. Others need to answer more honestly. The issue really isn't speed. It's just how honest the communication is. You can reply immediately and still completely avoid the real conversation. You can reply late and actually bring your whole self. One honest text may do more for community than months of saying you're looking for your tribe. The phrase "my tribe" should probably be retired anyway. I feel like it's been overworked by festivals, online courses, and people with too many bracelets. Connection doesn't need branding. It just needs you to be there and actually present. Then we come to purpose. Purpose may be the most abused word in modern self-development. Everyone is searching for it, selling it, branding, coaching, mapping, monetizing, or turning it into some kind of webinar. The idea has become so inflated that ordinary responsibility starts to look beneath the dignity of someone who is destined for something meaningful or greater. People want purpose, but they can't keep one small promise. That's a huge problem. A purpose you cannot practice in miniature might just be fantasy. If your purpose is to help people, can you keep the promise you made to one person? If your purpose is to create, can you write one page, record one thought, or make one thing without needing to know whether it will matter? If your purpose is spiritual, can you pray when nobody is watching? Tell the truth when it costs you? Or return to the practice when it feels empty? Grand purpose can become an escape from small obedience. I know obedience is an uncomfortable word for modern people. We prefer authenticity and alignment, sovereignty, and other words that look good on neutral-colored websites. But I think purpose often requires obeying what is already yours to do. That small promise you made is where your identity becomes real. Maybe you're thinking of doing one push-up, or drinking water when you wake up, or walking for 10 minutes, or going to sleep before you start doom scrolling. Keeping a small promise may seem unrelated to your calling, but it isn't. It actually trains the part of you that's going to need to carry the calling. Many people want a life larger than their current habits can support. And personally, I would also probably take that as an insult, but let's look at it more as a diagnostic. You may have a real calling. You may possess talent, sensitivity, intelligence, spiritual hunger, and the ability to help people. But if your life is built on broken promises to yourself, the calling will have nowhere to land. Every opportunity will be filtered through that same instability. The small promise begins repairing the ground. I beg you not to underestimate that. A person who can keep one small promise every day starts becoming dangerous to their old patterns. They're no longer waiting to feel transformed before acting. They're gathering evidence. The nervous system begins to learn that action doesn't always have to be dramatic, heroic, or humiliating. It can just be simple and repeatable. That's how trust returns. You don't have to make an enormous single declaration. You just need to connect with reliability. I think spiritual people often resist this because reliability sounds boring. We want fire. We want revelation. We want the moment when everything changes, that Gnostic download. Sometimes life gives us those moments, but most of the time, transformation looks like a person becoming less dramatic and more dependable. That may be the less I get it, that might be the less glamorous face of holiness. You just become someone who can be trusted with ordinary things, and then, perhaps, you can be trusted with more. No, I get it, I was a bit intense, and I'll try to be more careful, because this could easily turn into a scolding session. That would miss the point, because I don't like scolding anyone. People avoid basics for reasons, including me. Trauma can make ordinary tasks feel threatening. Neurodivergence can affect time, focus, sensory experience, and task initiation. Depression can turn a glass of water into an assignment with actual emotional weight. Chronic pain can make cleaning one dish cost more than a healthy person understands. Poverty can limit options. Family systems can make honesty unsafe. Some people are not avoiding the basic thing because they're spiritually unserious. They're just overwhelmed. This is where compassion belongs. But compassion shouldn't become a way of denying agency. A person might need support, medication, therapy, or a completely different strategy. Fine. Good. Get the help that is actually needed. The point remains. Spiritual growth eventually touches the ordinary life. Maybe your basic thing has to be smaller than someone else's. Maybe it has to be adapted. Maybe your clean the room is throw away one wrapper. Maybe your go to bed is put the phone down 10 minutes earlier. Maybe your honest text is a draft you don't send yet because honesty also requires timing. Scale the action down until it becomes possible. Do not scale the truth down until it becomes fake. That's the balance. The basic thing is meant to locate you, not create shame. Where am I actually able to act? That question is merciful because it gives you a place to start. Without it, the mind drifts into abstract suffering. Everything is wrong. Nothing can change. The whole world must be solved at once. Usually you become buried under the imagined totality of repair and despair. The basic thing interrupts that spiral. Eat something reasonable, drink water, sleep, step outside, tell the truth, clean one mess, answer the message, keep one promise. Eat something reasonable, drink water, sleep. Leave before resentment takes root. Stretch the place that has been clenched for years. Each action is small, but small doesn't mean superficial. Small is where the spiritual life can become measurable enough to be honest. This is why I think the basics are sometimes so much scarier than advanced practices. Advanced practices can be vague. You can have a complicated relationship with meditation and still feel spiritual. You can discuss surrender beautifully while surrendering nothing specific. You can talk about embodiment while refusing to inhabit the next 5 minutes. The basic thing puts a demand on you. It asks for contact. Do this, now, in the body, in the room, in the relationship, in the hour you already have. This is where practical mysticism becomes almost comically severe. God isn't only in the retreat center, the shrine, the dream, or the beautiful moment when the sunlight hits the wall. The divine is also in the task that you keep stepping over while asking for a more interesting form of instruction. The plate in the sink may not be sacred in a sentimental way, but your refusal to deal with it might reveal something sacredly important. The unanswered text might not contain your destiny, but your avoidance of honesty might be the exact place where your spiritual work is happening. The bedtime you keep ignoring might not feel like a prayer, but sleeping might let you be less cruel tomorrow. We keep separating holiness from functionality, and I think that separation has damaged us. A person can be spiritually interested while functionally completely chaotic. Many of us have lived that way. I don't think interest is the same thing as integration, is it? Integration is when the thing you believe starts changing the way you do everything. Answer messages, eat lunch, spend money, speak to your family, even keep promises. That's much harder than just sounding deep, and it's also less exhausting in the long run. A fake spiritual life requires constant explanation. There's always a reason the ordinary responsibilities don't apply. There's always a special circumstance, a special wound, a special exception. Eventually, the explanations become a second life. You spend more energy defending the chaos than it would take to repair one part of it. I think the basic thing offers relief because it doesn't require a speech. Just do the thing. Notice what happens. If resistance appears, study it. Not every resistance is laziness. Some of it is fear, some is grief, some is confusion. Some is just the body saying no for a reason. Some is the ego refusing humility. Some is the child part of the self expecting punishment. Some of it is just fatigue. The action reveals the resistance, and the resistance reveals the next layer of work. This is why one push-up can become spiritual. It shows you impatience, pride, self-doubt, the addiction to intensity, the difficulty of stopping, and the strange distrust you may have of small beginnings. The push-up is just the doorway. The same is true for other basics. Trying to sleep might reveal that you're addicted to the private world that opens after everyone else is unavailable. Cleaning may reveal grief. Eating could reveal self-punishment. Sending the honest text may reveal your fear of being known. Drinking water may reveal how long you have ignored your own signals. Walking outside might reveal that your mind has been living in an artificial climate for too long. The basic thing is not basic because nothing is happening. It's basic because it's foundational. Foundation is usually underground. Nobody claps for it. It doesn't photograph well, but the structure depends on it. So the practice I'm suggesting is pretty simple. Before making your state mystical, check the foundation. This is not a way of dismissing spiritual experience. We're just trying to protect it from avoidable distortion. Ask the unglamorous questions first. Ask about your sleep, about your hunger, about your hydration, about your movement for the day. Have you been staring at a screen too long? Are you avoiding conversation? Have I broken a promise to myself so many times that I no longer believe my own intentions? Okay, that last one was personal, so please don't ask these questions with contempt. Ask them like someone who knows the truth. Ask them like someone who really wants the truth. If the answer is embarrassing, that's usually a good thing. Embarrassment can be clarifying when it doesn't turn into shame. It means the solution might be closer than you thought. A problem that felt cosmic might just have one handle you can actually grab. Of course, not every problem will become simple. You might sleep, eat, hydrate, clean, move, tell the truth, and then still suffer. That happens. Life isn't some kind of vending machine where basic habits purchase enlightenment. There are mysteries that remain mysterious. There's pain that doesn't evaporate because you did the dishes. But after doing the basic thing, your suffering is cleaner. That might be a weird phrase, but I really do mean it. You're no longer adding avoidable chaos to unavoidable pain. You aren't creating fog and then calling the fog a part of your destiny. You're not asking God to rescue you from consequences that you continue to manufacture. We've removed one layer of distortion. What remains sometimes is still hard. At least now we can meet it more honestly. I think that's, again, a part of spiritual maturity. Not necessarily the absence of suffering or presence of a constant calm. Not really being above biology. I think maturity is the willingness to handle the obvious without feeling insulted by it. If you're tired, you'll sleep. If you're thirsty, you'll drink. If the room is depressing you, you might clean it up a little bit. If you want purpose, you might keep one promise. And if you want depth, stop treating the surface of your life like it doesn't matter. The surface is where depth appears. A person's spirituality is not only revealed in what they say about God or the universe or source or energy. It appears in how they return a shopping cart, how they talk to you when they're hungry, how they manage their frustration, and whether their private habits support the public wisdom they offer. That's so annoying because it gives us nowhere to hide. It's also beautiful because it means the holy is near. It's close by. You don't need to wait for the perfect retreat or perfect teacher or perfect season. The basic thing is already here, probably within arm's reach, possibly growing bacteria. Start there. The spiritual life may become less dramatic at first, but that's good. Drama is often where the ego hides when it feels like there's no use for it. Let it be ordinary for a while. Let your practice look like sleep, water, honesty, and one breath before you make everything worse. If the big mystical thing is real, I don't think it'll be offended by the small practical thing. Truth doesn't fear soap. God isn't threatened by lunch. The soul isn't cheapened by bedtime. And your purpose will survive a cleaned room. And if some spiritual idea collapses the moment you become rested, fed, and honest, maybe it wasn't a spiritual idea at all. Maybe it was just a symptom. And that's fine. We have all mistaken symptoms for messages. The important thing is to learn. Before you make it mystical, do the basic thing. Then see what is still true. This has been Idiot Mystic. Thank you for spending this time with me. Now maybe go clean one dish before you explain your destiny to anyone.